All right, Julian Serrano, we just did 13 miles, essentially half marathon. Your brother committed suicide and you start getting to ultra running. Like, what does that feel like? Like, why do a Leadville 100? Why go all these crazy distances?
Yeah, so it's just to figure out my problems, right? Running is an outlet like no other because it's simple, it's arduous, it's the same thing over and over again. You have nowhere to go. It's just you forcing yourself to go internal and face all your problems. Where at the gym, you've got people, you've got weights, you've got music. At work, you've got work. At home, you've got family. On a run, unless you're running with someone else, and even if you run with someone else, usually you go into a state of zen where there's no talking, it's just running. And you go internal then. But most of my running is done alone, like most people. And like you and I ran this morning, but there were still many moments where there was silence.
Right.
And it wasn't like planned. It was just, you went internal, I went internal. Now, 100 miles is life. It's a journey. It's a life journey that you just have to endure. You have to endure the bad times, the weak times, the dark times. And as long as you always have hope, and as long as you understand that nothing lasts forever, good moments don't last forever, bad moments don't last forever, like you'll make it. It's a direct application to everything we're going through in life.
Yeah, ultra running, anything physical, or any challenge in life really is an analogy for what could possibly go wrong, what could possibly be difficult. And we're just finding these outlets to be able to process through these things. Like, I'm currently going through the shop build out right now, Upside Tattoo scheduled to open like a month and a half, and it's like, there's all these different layers that like, I'm panicking, I'm nervous about as being the business owner, while still trying to balance like the family side. And then we've got our personal stuff, like what's going on up here and in here. So I mean, with all of that, like, what are some of the things that your coping mechanisms that you find that inside of running, outside of the physical act, like what does it actually do to help you work through your processes, like your actual struggles that are happening now?
Honestly, the exact thing it does is it instills stillness. So while you are physically moving, you are internally not. While the world is so fast now that we're always moving, mentally, physically, phones, rings, music, people talking, horns, traffic, TV, like there's noise everywhere.
Yeah.
And the act of running is internal.
Yeah.
Like it's internal silence and it's internal violence. You're going to face everything that's inside.
I see that. I understand that. I've had that. So I want to talk about like our first experience with running. Like the first time that I've actually ran voluntarily by myself, I was 18. I didn't really enjoy staying at home. Like my father was murdered when I was like 16. I lived with my mom and I was just trying to be a man in the world by myself. I didn't really have any male role models in my life. So at 18, I just wanted to get my first job and then move out as quick as I could. But I was still attached to the hip by my mom. Like she needed me to be there to be her support. And I couldn't do that at that particular time. I wasn't emotionally and physically capable to be there to support her, mentally also, financially. So my goal was to move out. I found my first apartment with a roommate, and without even telling her, her only boy, who lived with her at the time, during this time of like stress and loss, I rented a U-Haul. I emptied out the room as quick as I could. The front door was open. My mom comes home and she sees a U-Haul truck, her door open, and she walks into her son's room, seeing me take apart the queen size bed that she bought for me. And she said, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm moving out." So just imagine telling your mom that, her only boy, that he's moving out without even talking to her about it.
Right.
This is the second time that I've heard my mom cry and wail at that sound, at that pitch. First time was when my dad died in the hospital. Second time was when I decided to pack up and leave without telling her. She just went into her room, locked the door. I panicked. I didn't know how to deal with that kind of stress, that tension, that anxiety. I literally just ran out the house. And I was in Brooklyn. I ran 20 blocks towards the shore and like Forrest Gumped it. I just kept running, like I was crying, I was upset, I was angry, I was flustered. By the time I realized it, like I was calm. And I turned around and I walked back. And then I went to her, she was in the dining room in front of my room, just depressed, and I got to talk to her through it. the only way I was able to talk to her through it was by going inward, finding through that motion, through the rage, like, what the fuck am I doing? What's my purpose? What's my plan? Am I upsetting my mom? Like, what's the right thing to do? And by the time I realized, I was like, I gotta go back and talk to her. Here's all my thoughts, my reasoning. I was able to make peace and get her to understand like why I had to do those things, right? So it helped me work through the internal dialogue to like, it's like Iron Man. Like Iron Man has a screen, he has all these ideas and he just like pulls these things into place. That's what running does for me. It pulls all these things that I'm gonna say, think, or do, and then I can present it a little bit better.
Right.
So that was my first experience, like really running, and I was like, oh shit, like, I didn't know you could do this, to clarify your mind that way. What was your first experience with like running voluntarily or like pushing through something physically challenging like that?
Yeah, it was crazy because you know, I am what people would say now an ultra athlete, and I just run. I run for myself. I don't run for any other reason, to be honest. And when I started running, it was 2013. I went on my first run. It was a mile, and it took me 18 minutes. I couldn't run straight. I honestly.
What are you running minute miles now?
Yeah, I barely finished it. You know.
What are you running a minute mile now? Like
my fastest mile now, I could probably do under 6 minutes.
Under 6 minutes, but you were taking 18 minutes at the time, so it takes time to get to that point.
But
your first mile, 18 minutes.
Yeah. So guys, understand this. Like you're gonna start. It's gonna be hard, and you need to remove your ego and focus on winning. Right? If you think you're gonna go out and run 3 miles and you've never ran before, your ego is saying, yeah, I'm gonna do it. The reality is you're not gonna do it, and then you're gonna quit. So let's start off with small goals, like 1 mile at a time, and let's be consistent. And you know, that's a metaphor for life. It's like we think we create this image in our mind that we can do something, that it's gonna be so easy. Like I know exactly what I'm gonna do, and when I get here, I'm gonna do this. But what we don't anticipate is the reality of life and the variables we can't control. And with running, if you haven't built an aerobic base, and if you haven't built your stamina, you don't just go out and run. Even people who have a history in athletics and they took time off, they still struggle. Now they are able to tap into things because they've got a background in it.
Yeah.
But anybody that gets hurt, injured, or takes a lapse like you did, you're gonna feel it when you come back.
Yeah.
But you have built the maturity and the mindset that it's okay. It's a progress, right? It's work in progress.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so you talked about like what I call building your foundation, your fundamentals through the aerobic part, your base, you know, your nutrition, like getting all those things in line. I relate that with like tattooing. And again, it's with anything. Like you have to learn your fundamentals, your basics. So relating it to like tattooing, like your line work, your solid black, your shading, before you can get to the advanced stuff like the portraits and the sleeves and the bodysuits. The same thing is like true with like running, where like you have to like gauge your first mile, what the right shoes are, what your pace is, your heart rate, your water, your recovery time. All those like foundations are true. What else in life do you feel like, in your experience, has been like necessary? Like, let's go into like real life examples. Like what areas in your life have you skipped steps that you realize, oh shit, I have to go back and like rework on these certain fundamentals? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in the personal development side, it's the same thing. Like you can't replace life experience with money, with coaching, with anything, right? Part of developing is living life, is making the mistakes, is taking opportunities, taking risks, and completely failing, completely underestimating the workload and overlooking your current state of maturity.
Yeah.
Because those are necessary, and you just can't replace life experience. So while you think we're going to achieve something in a certain amount of time, what you don't ever really understand is where you are currently, and are you able to accept the things that come with what you want, or are you mature enough to handle those things?
Yeah.
Because like most people, right, they win the lotto and they're broke in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's because the lotto didn't make them broke, their habits got them broke, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with running. Like it's literally identical. Like you can't expect to go sign up for a 100-mile race when you haven't run 3 miles.
That's right.
Now, like me, I threw myself in the fire, and I had never run a marathon before I ran 100 miles.
Right.
I actually ran my first marathon 10 days before my 100-miler.
Right. And again, what was like, what led you to get up to that moment? Like, what was a real-time thought process of like, Why even push that? If you've never done it before, if you know you need to like build your base, like why commit that far?
To 100 miles?
Yeah.
So my best friend committed suicide. My brother committed suicide, and we needed to raise money. And I said, what can I do that is going to catch people's attention, and that's going to be something that everyone's going to say I can't do it. Everyone's going to label me. Everybody's going to put a title on what I'm capable of. And what is unrealistic? Because everybody said there's no way. The weather, the time frame, the miles on your body. I had somebody at work to literally tell me, and you know who you are, you're not going to run 100 miles in 24 hours. You have 8 weeks of training left. It's not possible, right? Listen, guys, you have to understand that whatever you think is possible, you make it possible, right? You with your words, you create reality. Actions create reality, but we talked about this one on a run. Don't ever talk down and say anything negative about yourself. You are creating truth. Like you're speaking it into existence. I am not this. I am only this. Currently, in your mental state, that's correct. Right. You are right.
Yeah.
Now,
you're setting boundaries. You're setting limitations for yourself.
You're setting limitations. Yeah. So when I went out and ran that 30 miles, I came in and I said to myself, how am I going to run 100 miles when 30 miles broke me? I wasn't wrapped up. I was peeing brown. I cramped for 3 days. And like everyone, even you know, and I love my wife. She's like, how are you going to run 100 miles? She's like, let's just push it. Middle of COVID, I had broke my foot 10 weeks prior. All the excuses, right? The race got canceled. Let's just wait till August. And for a moment, a human moment, I said, maybe she's right. And then I said, no. You don't run away when things get hairy.
That's right.
You don't run away. So I said, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, I thought about jumping into traffic, breaking a leg. I was willing to endure that pain over failure. And that thought, that came to my mind. I thought about so many dumb things.
It happens a lot.
For sure. And you know what I said the morning of? I woke up, I barely slept that night. I woke up and I said, I'm going to run 1 mile. And I'm going to just do that. And I hit 50 miles. I'll never forget, it was a moment. I was on the ground, rehydrating. There was like 10 people around me. There's a video. And they're clapping. And I'm zoned out. I'm focused. And they're like, you just hit 50 miles. And I'm like, well, it's not 100, so I just need 1 more mile. And the moment that I got to 87 miles was the first time. It was 21 hours in. No, 20 hours in. It was the first time my mindset shifted to, what do I have left? And that almost broke me. And so the lesson here, guys, is you need the vision has to come in, right? Because there's so much in the world. There's so much to offer. There's so much competition. There's so much distraction. Like you have to narrow in. It will be so much harder if you look at it with a wide angle because it's overwhelming. And the mind will crash. It will crash. And I had to break it down from miles, Andy, to seconds. I lived my life for the next 3 more hours. We finished in 23 hours. For 3 hours, I lived my life by 10-second increments. 10 seconds, I'm going to walk. 10 seconds, I'm going to run. And it was a long 3 hours.
I'm sure.
It felt like a lifetime. But when it was said and done, 10 minutes later, I finally accepted the reality that we as humans are physically and mentally unstoppable. I was ready to continue. And that's after 100 miles, right? So understanding you are capable of anything. Anything. There's no limit on earth. There's no limit. And I mean, it's really corny, but the only limit that you have is what you place in your square box of life.
The cliche saying is like sky's the limit. But in reality, you can go even past the sky. You can go to outer space. So I mean, I just want to leave it with this. Like, we know we're not at our greatest state, right? So long as we're alive, like we have more potential that we can tap into. So I mean, as far as where you're currently at and rising to like this level of greatness that Julian Serrano has, like what are the next steps that you have to take? What are the next actionable steps? What are the next mindset shifts that you have to make to rise to that level of greatness, the next potential?
So you have to eliminate, and when I say you, I'm talking to myself, guys. This is a mirror here. We talked about this morning. When we put content out, people say that, they're the haters will say they're showing off, they're doing this. No, we're explaining to you what we're going through, and there's takeaways from that, right? And the takeaway is that you have to remove all distractions, and you have to understand that the goals and aspirations you have require a certain level of maturity and discipline. That if you're not there yet, you're not executing at the discipline level, and you're not patient and mature enough in that level of the side. So those are the two takeaways that you have to dial in. And so remove distractions, discipline your actions, and practice patience, which will build maturity.
Yeah. Brother, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Let's go hit the Squire program
Let's go.
and let's crush it.